Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Good evening and may the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. This is episode 17 on our subject, Where is the Hope of the World? Now, I would like to begin our study on the Old Symbolic Ode, 3 Symbolic Ode, number 8 to 10, page 8. The statement saying, the fact that we as yet do not understand the whole book proves that some parts of it are yet closed. 3 Symbolic Ode, number 8 to 10, page 8. I would like to read again. The fact that we as yet do not understand the whole book proves that some parts of it are yet closed. And we will be dealing to those portions by which it was not as yet completely unfolded concerning the book of Daniel. Now, I would like to read the statement on Consecrated Way to Christian Perfection on page 8, from pages 96 and page 98. And it says, and now let us consider further the scripture expressions in Daniel chapter 8 concerning this little horn power. In verses 11 and 25, this little horn power, it is said, he shall magnify himself in his heart. He magnified himself even to or against the prince of the host. And he shall also stand up against or reign on opposition to the prince of princes. This is explained in 2 Thessalonians, 2nd chapter, where the apostle, in correcting wrong impressions which the Thessalonians had received concerning the immediate coming of the Lord, says, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worship, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3, 4, and 5. Plainly, this scripture describes the same power that is represented by the little horn in Daniel chapter 8. But there are other considerations which more fully show it. He says that when he was at Thessalonica with the brethren, he had told them these very things which now he writes. In Acts chapter 17, verses 1 to 3, is the record concerning Paul when he came yet with the Thessalonians as follows. Now when they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where was a synagogue of the Jews. And Paul, as his manner was, went in unto them, and 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them out of the Scriptures. And in this reasoning with them out of the Scriptures, he told them about this falling away which should come, and which would be the revealing of the man of sin, the mystery of iniquity, the son of perdition, who would oppose himself to God, and would exalt himself above all that is called God, or that is worship, even putting himself in the place of God, and passing himself off for God. In reasoning with the people out of the Scriptures, where in the Scriptures did Paul find the revelation from which he could tell to the Thessalonians all this? It was in the 8th chapter of Daniel, where the apostle found it. And from this it was that he told it to them while he was there. For in the 8th chapter of Daniel are the very expressions which he uses in 2 Thessalonians, of which he says, remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. This fixes the time to be after the apostles' days, when Rome magnified itself even to the prince of the host, and against the prince of princes, and connects it directly with the falling away or apostasy which developed the papacy or Rome in its latter and ultimate phase. Now let us read verses 11 and 12 of Daniel chapter 8. And it will be plainly seen that here is exactly the place where Paul found the scripture from which he taught the Thessalonians concerning the man of sin and the mystery of iniquity. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down, and an host was given him against the daily by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. This plainly points out that which took away the priesthood, the ministry, and the sanctuary of God and of Christianity. Now, let us study closely such prediction given by Daniel and as explained by Apostle Paul, together with the explanation given by Alonzo Jones, Sister White, on the Shepherd's Rod Publications. I would like to read tract number 3 on page 25. Now let's read the statement. Tract number 3, page 25. And it is concerning Daniel 8, verse 11 and 12, and Daniel 11, verse 31. It says, from this juxtaposition of Daniel 8, verse 11 and 12, and Daniel 11, verse 31, the reader will observe that both scriptures are speaking of the same power. And Christ predicting the signs of the end of the world as he looked forward along the stream of time declared, when ye, his followers, who were to be living at the time, that this horn power was at work against God, against his truth, and his people, therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. And let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Matthew 24, verse 15 and 16. These clear words of Christ himself place the work of this power in the future from his time. Now, let us carefully elaborate this very important reading in the scriptures. The Shepherd's Rod plainly told us, and I would like to read 2SR. Here in 2SR, on pages 27 and page 28, it says, a large portion of Christendom agree that we are living in the last days of this world's history. When Jesus was asked by his disciples for the signs of his return to earth again and of the end of the world, one of the many signs he gave was, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Matthew 24, verse 15. It is evident from the words of the Master that the book of Daniel contains information regarding the signs of the times and of the end of the world. The prophecies of Daniel were of little worth to the disciples and the early Christian church, for Daniel says the book was sealed to the time of the end. Now, ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. First of all, the admonition given by Jesus Christ that those who read it, let him understand. Would you think that admonition given by Jesus Christ is applicable to the time when Jesus Christ himself sealed the book by which it utters the impossibility to comprehend the book? The Shepherd's Rod made it so plain. In 2SR 111, it says, the book of Daniel, 2SR 111, the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation were written especially for the generation living at the time of the end, and not so much for the Roman world. They had no understanding of the writings that pertain to the last days, and thus could not have profited by them. The shepherd's rod made it so plain that the time of the end, in more specific terms, began in the year 1844. Now, I would like to read the statement in 3 Symbolic Code, number 8 to 10, page 8. It says, "This time must have begun when the book began to be opened, but if we must declare the beginning of that time in more specific terms, it, in a spatial sense, began in the year 1844. The time of the end is the period just before the end of the world." 3 Symbolic Code, 8 to 10, page 8. And the shepherd's rod plainly told us in 2TG number 7, page 3, saying, Daniel was told to shut and seal the book even to the time of the end. The book, therefore, was not for the understanding of the people before the time of the end. With those passages, we can safely conclude that such admonition given by Jesus Christ must be to the people living in the period of the time of the end. And the shepherd's rod plainly told us in 3 Symbolic Code, 8 to 10, page 8, that the time of the end, in more specific terms, began in the year 1844. Obviously, therefore, that admonition given by Jesus Christ in Matthew 24, verse 15, must be to the people living in the time of the end, beginning from 1844 onwards. Now, let us read tract number 3. It says here in tract number 3 on page 34, let's read a statement. "The work of the exceeding great horn was therefore what he did not understand. And so it was that later, in those days, he was again mourning, this time 3 full weeks, whereupon he says," it seems there is direct significance, the occurrence in the days of Daniel and in the days of Apostle Paul. According to the scriptures in Acts 17, when Apostle Paul was in Thessalonica or Thessalonians, he spent 3 Sabbaths to explain to them the book of Daniel. And Daniel also spent 3 weeks just to understand the vision. And it is concerning the vision of the exceeding great horn by which Daniel did not understand. Therefore, brothers and sisters, we need to focus our attention to that portion by which Daniel did not understand. In 2TG number 33, on page 10, it says here, let's read the statement given by the shepherd's rod. 2TG number 33, page 10. It says, "Daniel was then promised all the light that could be given, not only on the vision of chapter 8, but on all that is noted in the scripture of truth in connection with the vision. That which the angel showed him is recorded in chapters 11 and 12. Or in other words, according to tract number 3, chapter 11 is the explanation of the vision on chapter 8. So the promise that was given by God on Daniel chapter 10, verse 21 is found on chapter 11. Now here in tract number 3, page 34 and 35, it says, "The work of the exceeding great horn was therefore what he did not understand. And so it was that later in those days he was again mourning, this time 3 full weeks, whereupon he says, I saw a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Ophir. Then said he unto me, Now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days. For yet the vision is for many days. For at the time of the end shall be the vision." Daniel chapter 10, verse 5, 12, and 14, and Daniel chapter 8, verse 17. That chapters 11 and 12 contain the explanation of the vision promised by the angel in chapter 10, can be readily recognized not only from the continuity of the angel's speech, but also from the fact that these chapters are the explanation of the vision in the 8th chapter. For the reader's convenience, we quote the last 2 verses of chapter 10 and a part of the angel's explanation recorded in chapter 11. Now in this reading, in tract number 3, pages 34 and 35, to repeat again, Daniel was troubled because he did not understand concerning the exceeding great horn in Daniel chapter 8. And he spent 3 full weeks just to understand the vision, but he failed. And then the promise was given to explain the vision, and it is found on chapter 11 and chapter 12. Now going back again in 2TG number 33, page 10, it says, chapter 11, you will see, begins with the vision of chapter 8, with the kings of Medo-Persia and Greece as symbolized by the ram and he-goat in chapter 8. Then was Daniel told that the explanation at last was sufficient, but that it was impossible for him to understand it all, for the vision was sealed to the time of the end. Chapter 12, verses 8 and 9. So here the voice of inspiration says in 2TG 33, page 10, the vision on chapter 8, the explanation that was given on chapter 11 and 12 is sufficient to explain the vision on chapter 8, particularly pointing to the exceeding great horn. Now, we know, brothers and sisters, that we as Shepherd's Rod believers understood that concerning Daniel chapter 11, according to 2TG, let us read the statement. In 2TG number, 42 on page, let's read 2TG 42, page 27, verse 45, "And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him." The only portion of Daniel 11 yet to be fulfilled is this verse, the last of the chapter. And since these prophecies are made to be understood only when they are being fulfilled or after fulfillment, verse 45 is not as clear as we should like to have it. Consequently, concerning the palace of his tabernacles and his end also, as to whether another Christian power shall inherit the title King of the North before verse 45 is fulfilled, only time itself will positively portray the whole truth. 2TG 42, page 27. And it was written on November 27, 1948. Now, in this reading, we can prove to you that the statement in the Great Controversy 344 is real, saying, even the prophets who had been favored with a special illumination with the Spirit of God did not fully comprehend the true import of the meaning of those things that they had foretold, for the message must be unfolded from time to time, according to the Great Controversy 344. Now, B.T. Hunter says in that reading, in 2TG 42, page 27, that he did not know as yet if there is another Christian nation to inherit the title King of the North. The title King of the North in the days of B.T. Hunter, he plainly declared that it is pointing to Great Britain in particular. Now here in 2TG number 7, page 10, it says, from the study of the 11th chapter of Daniel, we have learned several positive truths. First, that the time of the end began in the 18th century, that the king of the south is the Ottoman Empire. Third, that the king of the north at the present time is Great Britain in particular. So that is the declaration that was declared by B.T. Hotep on September 20, 1947. And then in 1948, he plainly told us that he did not know that if there is another Christian nation to inherit the title King of the North. But the fact is, in 2SR, it was written in 1932, in 2SR page 151, let's read the statement. It says, I would like to read the statement in 2SR 151. The two-horned beast is the only one representing a local religio-political government. Do not forget that statement. The two-horned beast is the only one representing a local religio-political government. Therefore, of him alone can it be said, it is a man. Thus, whosoever shall stand at the head of that persecuting power, as described in this chapter, and represented by the beast, is the one who shall bear the mystical number 666. The spirit of prophecy also states that the king of the north brought to view in Daniel 11 verse 45 and the two-horned beast of Revelation 13 is the same power, and that it shall bear this mystical number 666. We quote, this power is the last that treads down the true church of God. And as the true church is still trodden down and cast out by all Christendom, it follows that the last oppressive power has not come to his end, and Michael has not stood up. This last power that treads down the saints is brought to view in Revelation 13, verse 11 to 18. His number is 666. Now, let us study closely this reading, brothers and sisters. 2SR 151. It was in 1932 that B.T. Hotep plainly declared in this reading that the last Christian nation to inherit the title King of the North must be the two-horned beast. And for sure, the two-horned beast cannot be applied to Great Britain. In this instance, we can prove to you that the same with Daniel and John the Revelator, that even though they themselves is the one who wrote the statement, but did not been able to understand what they had written. Now, here in the Shepherd's Rod, 2SR 151, it is very plain to understand that the last oppressive power, the statement, the last oppressive power, it is pointing to the exceeding great horn, the horn power. And that is why in track number 3, page 25, let us read again the statement. From this juxtaposition of Daniel chapter 8, verse 11 and 12, and Daniel 11, verse 31, the reader will observe that both scriptures are speaking of the same power. We know that the power mentioned in Daniel 8, verse 11 and 12 is the exceeding great horn. And that is the portion by which Daniel did not understand, according to track number 3, page 34. And the explanation given was found in chapter 11 and chapter 12. And the Shepherd's Rod says, brothers and sisters, in 2TG 42, page 27, that the only portion in Daniel chapter 11 by which it was still unfulfilled is verse 45. And we already read in 2SR 151 that last oppressive power in Daniel 11 verse 45 and the power represented by that president, the head of the United States of America, who shall bear this mystical number 666, is the same power. Now, here in track number 3, page 25, let us read again. From this juxtaposition of Daniel 8, verse 11 and 12, and Daniel 11, verse 31, the reader will observe that both scriptures are speaking of the same power, and Christ, predicting the signs of the end of the world as he looked forward along the stream of time, declared, when ye, his followers, who were to be living at the time that this horn power was at work against God and against his truth. What truth? The daily and the sanctuary, and against his people. Therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Matthew 24, verse 15 and 16. These clear words of Christ himself placed the work of this power in the future from his time. Now, first of all of us will agree that it was primarily applied in the Dark Ages. I would like to say primarily applied in the Dark Ages. Because if that is the particular object in view, then why is it that God withhold the understanding of the book of Daniel? That is the period of time by which the book was still sealed. And there is no possibility that the people of God in that period of time could understand the book because it was sealed. Therefore, they had not been profited by it, brothers and sisters. And that is why, without any doubts, I would like to use the term in track number 5, page 34, fulfilled prophecies are seen therefore to be employed by the scriptures only as groundwork for that part of prophecy which is yet to be fulfilled. I would like to read again. It says, track number 5, page 34. Fulfilled prophecies are seen therefore to be employed by the scriptures only as groundwork for that part of prophecy which is yet to be fulfilled. Track number 5, page 34. Now, let us focus our attention to Daniel chapter 8. Remember, brothers and sisters, the focal point on Daniel chapter 8, it is concerning the exceeding great horn and the daily and the sanctuary. Now, remember the second chapter of the Thessalonians, according to our reading, in Consecrated Way to Christian Perfection, the explanation that was given by Apostle Paul to the Thessalonians is found on Daniel chapter 8, verse 11 and verse 12, by which such vision had been sufficiently explained on Daniel chapter 11 and chapter 12, according to 2TG 33, page 10. Now, the statement recorded in 2SR 151, which perfectly coincides with the statement in tract number 3, page 25, saying that when this horn power is at work, the Shepherd's Rod says that the focal point of the admonition given by Jesus Christ in Matthew 24, verse 15 and 16, is to Christ's followers who were to be living at the time that this horn power was at work against God, against His truth, and against His people. First of all, brothers and sisters, I would like to quote that statement in Testimonies for the Church on volume 5. Let's read the statement. Testimonies for the Church on volume 5, page 452. It says, "It is no time now to allow our minds to be engrossed with things of minor importance." What is minor importance? Food, clothing, and shelter. Right? Let me read to you. Christ and His righteousness on page 46. It says, "The righteousness of God. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." Matthew 6, verse 33. The righteousness of God, says Jesus, is the one thing to be sought in this life. Food and clothing are minor matters in comparison with it. God will supply them as a matter of course, so that anxious care and worriment need not be expended on them. But to secure God's kingdom and His righteousness should be the only object of life. That's why the Shepherd's Rod says in 2TG number 35. I would like to read that reading. It says on page 6, God's righteousness, you see, is His integrity, His sure promises, His might to perform. He guarantees His promises. They never fail. To have the righteousness of the Lord, therefore, is to have His integrity and faithfulness. And this we can never have so long as we mistrust Him, never so long as we doubt His word, for to doubt is nothing short of calling Him a liar. To doubt is the greatest offense one can commit. No one can doubt God and still receive His blessings and promises. To have the righteousness of the Lord, therefore, is to implicitly trust Him without reservation. And where does He expect us to begin? He wants us to begin with the thing that troubles us most, the temporal things of tomorrow. He wants us to learn that we cannot serve self and God too. In page 7 it says, these 3 verses plainly say that to live, to make a living, and to worry how you are to fare tomorrow is nothing less than serving mammon or self, that you cannot serve self and God at the same time. That if you serve God, you should be as free from worry of the future as are the birds. Yes, you should be even more confident of His care, for you are worth more than are the birds. You are wholeheartedly to know that so long as you serve Him, so long as you serve God, He will never leave you nor forsake you. 2TG 35, pages 6 and page Now let us go back again to Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, page 452. It is no time now to allow our minds to be engrossed with things of minor importance. While men are sleeping, Satan is actively arranging matters so that the Lord's people may not have mercy or justice. The Sunday movement is now making its way in darkness. The leaders are canceling the true issue, and many who unite in the movement do not themselves see whether the undercurrent is tending. Its professions are mild and apparently Christian, but when it shall speak, it will reveal the spirit of the dragon. It is our duty to do all in our power to avert the threatened danger. We should endeavor to disarm prejudice by placing ourselves in a proper light before the people. We should bring before them the real question at issue, thus interposing the most effectual protest against measures to restrict liberty of conscience. We should search the scriptures and be able to give the reason for our faith. Says the prophet, the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. Volume 5, page 452. Let us be God's people, real God's people, logical thinkers, and not bait hunters. 2 TG 24:23. Or in other words, in 2 TG number 6, it says that we need to be a deep Bible student. 2 TG number 6, page 15. But we must not be superficial readers and thinkers. Let us be deep Bible students. 2 TG number 6, page 15. If the devil is not making its way in the darkness, canceling the true issue, there will be no need for God such admonition that we need to study closely the book of Daniel, and then admonishing us that those who read it, let him understand. Or in other words, that statement in tract number 3, page 25, saying, when ye, his followers, who are to be living at the time that this horn power was at work against God, against his truth, and against his people, plainly indicating that at the time that this horn power is already at work against God, against his truth, the daily and the sanctuary, and against his people, it was hid in the dark. It was hidden in the darkness. And the only way that you could be able to discern the time when this horn power is at work against God and against his truth and against his people is through studying the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. For if such deception, for if such scheme is very apparent to the finite observation, then there is no need for God to admonish us to study closely the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. That's why in Prophets and Kings 547, it says, as we near the close of this world history, the prophecies recorded by Daniel demand our special attention, for they relate to the very time in which we are living. And in such study, we need to link the last book of the New Testament scriptures, and that is the book of Revelation. And secondly, the mere fact that the book of Revelation is to be more fully understood, the promise was in 2 TG number 12, page 30, saying, the revelation, therefore, is to be more fully understood during the judgment of the living. We know that such understanding of the book cometh only from God, and the reason that God will be completely unfold the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation in the judgment of the living plainly indicating that this predicted event will finally be realized in the judgment of the living, rather than in the judgment that pertains to the dead. Now, let us go back again, brothers and sisters, to our main subject concerning the exceeding great horn recorded in Daniel chapter 8, verse 11 to 12, by which, according to the voice of inspiration in track number 3, that verse 31 in Daniel chapter 11 is pointing to the same power on Daniel chapter 8, verse 11 and 12. I would like to read again the statement here in track number 3, page 25. From this juxtaposition of Daniel 8, verse 11 and 12, and Daniel 11, verse 31, the reader will observe that both scriptures are speaking of the same power. You see, speaking of the same power. So the power mentioned in Daniel 8, verse 11 and 12, and Daniel 11, verse 31, is pointing to the same power and pointing, brothers and sisters, to the exceeding great horn. Now let us read first the statement in track number 3, page 39. It says here, and as the great horn of the he-goat is symbolical of the Roman world represented by iron, in Daniel 2 verse 40, in its 3 periods, pagan, ecclesiastical, and Protestant period. Also as in its 2nd period, it threw the truth and the host underfoot and polluted the sanctuary by bringing in the abomination while it practiced and prospered. Daniel 8 verse 12. The 2,300-day period accordingly extends beyond the fall of ecclesiastical Rome and reaches into the Protestant period. Let us connect our study to the 2,300 days and nights. And I know that everybody is familiar that the 2,300 days and nights ended in October 22, 1844. Now, remember, brothers and sisters, the subject or the main subject in Daniel chapter 8 is the exceeding great horn. And the exceeding great horn, according to this reading in track number 3, page 39, is pointing to the Roman world. Pointing to the Roman world, according to this reading in track number 3, page 39. But the clear words of Jesus Christ in track number 3, page 25, these clear words of Christ himself placed the work of this power in the future from his time. Of course, the entire period, I would like to use the term, the entire period of Jesus Christ on his first advent must be from 4 BC up to 31 AD. We know that in May 27, 31 AD, Jesus Christ ascended to heaven. Now, the Shepherd's Rod says that the clear words of Christ himself place into the future the fulfillment of this power. What power? The exceeding great horn. When such power is at work against God, against his truth, and against his people. And it says it plays into the future. Now, in track number 12, it is even more specific. Track number 12, on page 81, that's the statement given by the Shepherd's Rod. Track number 12, page 81. Pollutes the sanctuary, takes away the daily. Let's read the statement. An arm shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily. And we know the word sacrifice, according to earlier writings, page 74, it is supplied by man's wisdom. It does not belong to the text. That is why I am no longer the word sacrifice, because it is not belong to the text. And to SR page 130, it says, the spirit prophecy, commenting on the text, says, then I saw in relation to the daily, Daniel 8 verse 12, that the word sacrifice was supplied by man's wisdom, and does not belong to the text. Early Writings, page 74. This being true, we must disregard the word sacrifice, but hold to the daily, although the word sacrifice is italicized, showing that it was supplied. A vision was given regarding the text, making it evident that a vital truth is involved in the words daily and sanctuary. Whatever the daily may be, it was taken away by the great horn. 2SR page 130. To repeat again, let us disregard the word sacrifice because it does not belong to the text. It is supplied by man's wisdom, and that's the reason why it was italicized. Now let us go back again to track number 12, page 81. It says, pollutes the sanctuary, takes away the daily. An arm shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. Daniel 11, verse 31. That these three links of truth, the polluting of the sanctuary, the taking away of the daily, and the placing of the abomination in the prophetic chain of events, brings us several centuries into the Christian era, is conclusively confirmed by Christ referring to them as in the future from the time He uttered the command. Track number 12, page 81. Now, in this reading, brothers and sisters, track number 12, page 81, the Shepherd's Rod made it so plain that the statement in Matthew 24, verse 15 and 16, it is not just an admonition, but rather it is a divine command that we need to implicitly follow. And I think there are three divine commands given in Matthew 24, verse 15 and 16. First, we need to understand the book of Daniel. Whoso readeth, let him understand. The mere fact that Christ gives an absolute admonition that we need to understand, or a divine command to understand the book of Daniel, plainly indicating that Jesus Christ Himself will give understanding. And that's why, to repeat again, that divine command cannot be applied in the people living prior to the time of the end, by which the time of the end began in the year 1844. Therefore, the divine command must be applied to the generation living from 1844 onwards. But the absolute fact is that B.T. Hotep himself says in Three Symbolic Code, number 8 to 10, page 8, that there are still some portion in the book of Daniel which is yet closed and they did not as yet understand. And for example, in 1948, November 27, B.T. Hotep says that he did not as yet understand if there is still another Christian nation to inherit the title King of the North after Great Britain. But it was already recorded in 2SR 151, brothers and sisters. Therefore, the particular object in view in this study must be pointing to the two-horned beast, the United States of America, the last Christian nation to inherit the title King of the North. And since the only verse in Daniel 11 that's still unfulfilled, according to 2 TG 42:27, is verse 45, and the Shepherd's Rod made it so plain in 2SR 151 that the power mentioned in verse 45 and the power mentioned in Revelation 13, verse 11 to 18, pointing to the President of the United States of America, by which unto him belong that mystical number 666, is the same power, the last oppressive power that will tread down the true people of God. And as far as the shepherd's rod is thus concerned, here in tract number 3, let me read to you. On page 39, it says, the treading of the horse is the massacring of the Christians who would not worship according to the dictates of the horn power. Now, I would like to read again. It says, the treading of the horse is the massacring of the Christians who would not worship according to the dictates of the horn power. Now, what is the power mentioned in Daniel 11 verse 31? Now, let me read to you here in tract number 3, page 28. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors, the Jews, are come to the full, a king of first countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up, and his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, for arms shall stand on his part. Daniel 11:31. The armies of the civil powers. Who are they, the arms that shall stand on his part? Recorded in Daniel 11 verse 31. That is the armies of the civil powers. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. Daniel 8 verse 23 and verse 24. I would like to read again the statement in 2SR page 151. It says, 2SR 151, we quote, this power. What power? The power mentioned in Daniel 11:45 and Revelation 13. We quote, this power is the last that treads down the true church of God. What is the treading of the horse? The massacring of the Christians. Now, I would like to read this statement in the writings for prophecy. 3SM. 3SM, page 397 and 398. This is under the chapter Meeting the Sandilo Crisis. Persecution in the battle before the last closing conflict. The two armies will stand distinct and separate. And this distinction will be so marked that many who shall be convinced of the truth will come on the side of God's commandment-keeping people. When this great work is to take place in the battle, prior to the closing conflict, many will be imprisoned, many will be forced to flee from the cities and towns, many will be martyrs for Christ's sake in standing in defense of truth. 3SM, page 397 and 398. I think that is very plain. It says, many will be martyrs for Christ's sake. And I do fully believe that is Revelation 14:13. Because if we will be studying the sanctuary doctrine, the shepherd's rod plainly told us here in tract number 1 on page 35, it says, the bright light going among the living creatures with the swiftness of lightning represents the speed with which this work will finally go forward to completion in behalf of his people during the judgment hour. Testimonies, volume 5, page 754. For the faces of the living creatures are figurative of the saints in time of judgment. The faces of the cherubim being the same as those of the beasts of the Revelation, they both necessarily have complementary significance. The K to which John supplies, and they sang a new song, saying, Thou art worthy to take the book and to open the seals thereof, for thou wast slain and hast redeemed us to God by thy blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation. Revelation 5 verse 9. Since the four living creatures in Ezekiel chapter 1 has the same complementary significance of the four beasts, Revelation chapter 5, chapter 4, and chapter 5. Therefore, since the significance of the four beasts and Revelation, according to 2SR, represent four classes of saints, according to 2SR 195, it says, therefore, it is evident that the four beasts are symbols which represent four groups of saints, gathered from all ages and out of every kindred, tongue, and people and nation. 2SR 195. Therefore, the four living creatures is also pointing to four classes of saints. And since the remaining seal from 1844 onwards is the last two seals, the sixth seal and the seventh seal, and the sixth seal being the last seal to the saints who are destined for grave and resurrection, it is divided into two classes, Isaiah 57:1 and Revelation 14:13. Isaiah 57:1, they are the saints who died on natural death. But Revelation 14 verse 13, they are those that predicted beforehand that they will be martyred for their faith when that horn power is at work, brothers and sisters. Because the treading of the horse is the massacring of the Christians. Track number 3, page 39. And the shepherd says that the last oppressive power, 2SR 151, to tread down the saints of God did not yet come to its end. And that is why in Revelation chapter 6, concerning the three classes of martyrdom, and we know that first it is the souls under the altar. Here in Revelation chapter 6, verse 9, and when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. The souls under the altar, they are the martyrs under the first period of the exceeding great horn, pagan Rome, and more pointing to the apostles, the disciples, and more pointing in the days of Nero, according to the great controversy on page 40. It says here, let us read the statement in the great controversy on page 40. This is a statement given by these persecutions beginning under Nero about the time of the martyrdom of Paul continued with greater or less fury for centuries. Christians were falsely accused of the most dreadful crimes and declared to be the cause of great calamities, famine, pestilence, and earthquake. As they become the objects of popular hatred and suspicion, informers stood ready for the sake of gain to betray the innocent. They were condemned as rebels against the empire, as foes of religion and pests to society. Great numbers were thrown to wild beasts or burned alive in the amphitheaters. Some were crucified, others were covered with the skins of wild animals and thrust into the arena to be torn by dogs. Their punishment was often made the chief entertainment at public pits. Vast multitudes assembled to enjoy the sight and greeted their dying agonies with laughter and applause. The Great Controversy, page 40. And in the book of Revelation, they are represented as the souls under the altar. Those who have been martyred for their faith in the first period of the exceeding great horn, pagan Rome. Verse 10, and they cried with a loud voice, saying, how long, O Lord, holy and true, and thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And white robes were given unto every one of them, and it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. The fellow servants, those who are martyred for their faith during the Dark Ages in the second period of the exceeding great horn, and that is the papal supremacy. But the statement, and their brethren, is pointing to Revelation 14:13. Those will be martyred for their faith, as recorded in 3SM page 397. That is, brothers and sisters, when that last power of the exceeding great horn in the Protestant period will tread down the saints of God. And the treading of the saints is the massacring of the Christians. Remember, brothers and sisters, the voice of inspiration is plainly telling here in track number 3. Let's go back again to the reading, saying that the arms that shall stand on his part is pointing to the armies of the civil powers. Now let's read track number 3, page 28. And it says, and in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressor, the Jews, are come to the full, a king of first countenance, in understanding dark sentences, shall stand up, and his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, for arms shall stand on his part. Daniel 11, verse 31. The armies of the civil powers. I would like to read a statement in the Great Controversy, 444. Charles Beecher, in a sermon in the year 1846, declared that the ministry of the evangelical Protestant denominations, so the focal point is concerning the evangelical church in the United States of America. It says, Charles Beecher, in a sermon in the year 1846, declared that the ministry of the evangelical Protestant denominations is not only formed all the way up under a tremendous pressure of merely human fear, but they live and move and breathe in a state of things radically corrupt and appealing every hour to every baser element of their nature to hush up the truth and bow the knee to the power of apostasy. Was not this the way things went with Rome? Are we not living her life over again? And what do we see just ahead? Another general council, a World's Convention, Evangelical Alliance, and Universal Creed. Sermon on the Bible, a Sufficient Creed, delivered at Fort Wayne, Indiana, February 22, 1846. When this shall be gained, then in the effort to secure complete uniformity, it will be only a step to the resort to force. The Great Controversy, page 444. Remember, that was in 1846. And how about now, in the year 2020, concerning the ministry of the evangelical denomination in the Protestant America. Now, brothers and sisters, Volume 5, Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5 on page, I think 620, let's read the statement. Volume 5, page 620, it says, we profess to have more truth than other denominations. Yet, if this does not lead to greater consecration, to purer, holier lives, of what benefit is it to us? It would be better for us to never have seen the light of truth than to profess to accept it and not be sanctified through it. Volume 5, page 620. And I think that statement is more definitely applied to us as the Berean. I do fully believe that we have more light than any other denominations. We have the Shepherd's Rod publications. And I remember the statement in the Old Symbolic Code, and I do fully believe this reading, brothers and sisters. Where is the Shepherd's Rod? is plainly telling to symbolic code number 2, page 5. It says, the shepherd's rod has led us to a greater knowledge in many Bible themes than any book we have ever had, showing that God is leading us day by day to a greater knowledge of His mysteries. We should be willing to walk in the light which we now have until it brings us face to face with this desired information to a perfect knowledge of all things, instead of stepping off from the path of light and into darkness just because He does not show us everything all at once, or because we cannot comprehend it all in a moment. To symbolic code number 2, page 5. But I would like to focus that statement that the shepherd's rod has led us to a greater knowledge in many Bible themes than any other book. That is the reality. And we'll be grateful for that, and we'll be thankful to the Lord, brothers and sisters, to have these publications, the shepherd's rod publications. And we need to love and the declaration given by the shepherd's rod, and we need to study closely, more particularly in the days in which we are living. Because, brothers and sisters, the statement in answerer number 2 on page 75, these prophecies must therefore be revealed in order to strengthen the church in her final warfare. Otherwise, for what purpose were they written? Answerer number 2, page 75. It says the prophecies, of course, it must be revealed before it will be fulfilled, so that the church will be strengthened to enter her final conflict. And the voice of inspiration admonishes us here in White House Recruiter, page 27, White House Recruiter. The prophecies, we all know, are heaven's light to our feet. I would like to read again. The prophecies, we all know, are heaven's light to our feet. If we fail to open our eyes and hearts to them, at the time the Lord would have us profit by the unrolling of the scroll, how then shall we escape being like the blind, leading the blind? White House Recruiter, page 27. It says, the prophecies, we all know, are heaven's light to our feet. If we fail to open our eyes and hearts to them, at the time the Lord would have us profit by the unrolling of the scroll, how then shall we escape being like the blind, leading the blind? I do fully believe, brothers and sisters, that we are now living in a period of time by which the promise given by God to Daniel will finally be realized in our days. I remember that statement in Daniel 12, verse 13. Here in Prophets and Kings, it says, 547 in Prophets and Kings, honored by men with the responsibilities of state and with the secrets of kingdoms, bearing universal sway, Daniel was honored by God as his ambassador and was given many revelations of the mysteries of ages to come. His wonderful prophecies, as recorded by him in chapters 7 to 12 of the book bearing his name, were not fully understood even by the prophet himself. But before his life labors closed, he was given the blessed assurance that at the end of the days, in the closing period of this world history, he would again be permitted to stand in his lot and place. But it can be understood that it is pointing to Daniel himself. But the spirit prophecy is pointing to the wish of Daniel that his book will be understood. It will be finally realized to the people of God in the last days. And it says that at the end of the days, in the closing period of this world history, he would again be permitted to stand in his lot and place. It was not given him to understand all that God had revealed of the divine purpose. Shut up the words and seal the book. He was directed concerning his prophetic writings. These were to be sealed even to the time of the end. Go thy way, Daniel. The angel once more directed the faithful messenger of Jehovah. For the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Go thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. Now we are not standing in the lot of Daniel, meaning that the desire of Daniel should be our desire. Can you imagine Daniel spent 3 weeks without eating and drinking because of his great desire to know the vision? Therefore, brothers and sisters, the statement in Daniel 12 verse 13 that we are now standing in the lot of Daniel, that there is a fervent desire in our hearts that we need to understand, brothers and sisters, the vision, and it is concerning the exceeding great horn. And we will so thankful to the Lord God Almighty because no, it's not only pertaining to Daniel chapter 11 and chapter 12, but at the same time, we have the Shepherd's Rod publications. We have the writings of Sister White. We have the 1888 message by which those messages, brothers and sisters, is sufficient to expound the subject concerning the exceeding great horn. And there is no reason that God would reveal that very important truth after the event. Then how could God's people be prepared for that event? I remember the statement in 1SR Pocket Edition. It says here on page 9, 1SR Pocket Edition, page 9. Let's read the statement. It says, any thinker knows that to have made known the truth of it before time would have left it as vain, valueless, and ineffective, as would making known the truth about the image of the beast years before, or a minute after it does its deceptive work. But at the striking of the foreordained hour, the time inspiration unlocks the mystery, all can behold the truth and profit by it. Happily, we can then intelligently strive to be among the guileless company and can be sealed with them if we sincerely and steadfastly follow on to know the truth on time. 1SR Pocket Edition, pages 9 and page 10. Therefore, the statement, brothers and sisters, timely truth, meaning the unfoldment must be on time, on the proper time. At the time when God's people have still chance to prepare themselves and to escape such oncoming destruction. So this subject, brothers and sisters, I'm inviting all Shepherd's Rod believers. If you have time, let us sit down and study closely this very important subject, and more particularly to the last oppressive power in Daniel 11 verse 45 concerning the exceeding great horn. Remember, the Bible says that he had been able to tread down the truth to the ground, the daily and the sanctuary. It practiced and prospered. And in closing, I would like to read this statement. It says here, I would like to read. It is concerning the signs of the times. November 10, 1887. A.T. Jones, The Signs of the Times. There can be no shadow of doubt that these scriptures from the book of Daniel are the basis of Paul's words in 2 Thessalonians, 2nd chapter. Nor can there be any just doubt that both these scriptures from the book of Daniel and from the 2nd Thessalonians refer specifically to the papacy. The little horn power of Daniel 7 was to continue a times and the dividing of time, 1,260 years. Then the judgment should sit, and they should take away his dominion, to consume and destroy it unto the end. And then the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Daniel 7 verse 26 and 27. The time of papal supremacy, the 1,260 years, ended in 1798. At the time the world entered upon the time called in the prophecy. The time of the end, Daniel 8 verse 17, Daniel 11 verse 45, Daniel 40 verse 35 and verse 40, and Daniel 12 verse 4. The judgment was set in 1844. His dominion has been taken away to consume and to destroy it unto the end. Soon he shall come whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and who shall consume that wicked with the spirit of his mouth and destroy him with the brightness of his coming. But before he comes, Satan is to work with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. Therefore it is certain that we are now living in the time when this working of Satan is to be looked for, and also the time when the truth is to be given, the love of which will save men from the falsehood and deception of the working of Satan. In our next, we shall definitely locate the place where this working of Satan should arise, and the power through which it will be most prominently manifested. So our next episode will be focusing definitely locate the place, the exact place where this working of Satan should arise, and the power through which it will be most prominently manifested. Thank you very much for listening and viewing this program, brothers and sisters. Hoping that you will continue listening and viewing our subject episode by episodes. And we love you, brethren. May the good Lord bless you, and have a wonderful evening.